Thank you for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. We would like to call upon the first speaker who will address the Environment Ministers Meeting, a parallel session held for the G7 in Toyama. We welcome a senior fellow from ISAP, as well as senior researcher from the National Institute of Environment Studies, Mr. Junichi Fujino. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. On May 15, 2016, this year, in Toyama, Japan, the Environment Ministers G7 meeting was held. The topic of the parallel meeting was role of cities organized by the city of Toyama, as well as ISAP as well. For the role of cities parallel session, mayors from 8 cities from the G7 countries convened from Italy, Florence, Vancouver, Canada, from Vitry-le-François, France, from Bristol, the UK, Frankfurt am Main, Germany, and from Japan, three cities, Higashi Matsushima and Kitakyushu and Toyama. We also had international entities join the parallel session. ICLE, a Global Environment Facility, N100 RC, as well as Dr. Shozo Murakami as head of the promotion committee for the Future City Initiative as well. Mr. Hironori Hamanaka, currently the chair of the board of directors of ISAP, also joined. And Mr. Mori and Mr. Kobayashi were co-chairs. The parallel session addressed the role of cities in the context of sustainable development goals and in the context of G7 talks. So we spent the whole day engaging in very intense discussions about concerns and dilemmas faced by cities. The result of the session was put together as a joint communique and published as a press report. And as you see in the morning breakfast meeting, the press report was shared by the environment ministers. We have Minister Marukawa sitting at the back of this picture. This was the first opportunity for cities to submit a report to the G7 ministerial meeting. The key issue was to leading advanced efforts in cities to make the transition to sustainable societies and to encourage new cities to be involved. For example, this year in October, we will meet in Quito in a similar manner, and also mainstreaming the role of cities. Please refer to the ISAP website for details. And I'm looking forward to the presentations by the 3 speakers. Thank you very much for that. We will move on to the session, which will be moderated by the chair of the board of directors, ISAP, Mr. Hironori Yamanaka. Thank you very much, Mr. Fujino, for that introductory remarks. We have limited amount of time, but we are happy to welcome Mr. Mori, Mayor of Toyama City, as well as Mr. Kobayashi, Vice Minister of the Ministry of the Environment, Japan. Back then, he was the counselor for global matters of his ministries. Today's topic is looking back on the role of cities as addressed by during the parallel session in the context of G7, Minister of Environment Studies for G7. So first round, we will look back on that parallel session held in the context of G7, in the framework of G7. And then part 2 is looking forward. What should be done. So let's go to the first round, which is a look back on the G7 Minister of Environment session. Why is it that, Mr. Mori, why is it that the G7 Minister of Environment meeting was held in Toyama? From a standpoint, from your perspective, Mr. Mayor, you probably want the government to respond to that question. But I'm sure you spearheaded a lot of efforts to invite the meeting to Toyama as well. So if you could share your experience as well as the significance of holding that environment ministers meeting in your prefecture, in your city. And lastly, your impressions or your hopes for future roles of cities in the context of sustainability, and from the standpoint of resilience, how cities should become resilient in the face of natural disasters such as earthquakes. So there are many issues for cities. We just saw a picture from that session. I'm wearing the same jacket as I was the other day. The fact that Toyama City was chosen as a venue for the G7 Minister of Environment meeting was really a great privilege, and we are grateful for the Minister of Environment as well. SC for All Energy Efficient City was an award given to us from Rockefeller Foundation. We were picked as one of the 100 resilient cities in the world. So we're picked. We've been commended for efforts against climate change as well. Compared to cities which generate energy from geothermal, Toyama City does not have similar achievements. But for a long time, in an age when population is decreasing and the society is aging, Toyama City has looked at how to make use of public transport, and also to strike a balance between automobiles and public transport, and to concentrate to centralize the city instead of expanding the city too much. So this was the first effort by a city to look at urban planning, city planning from an environmental perspective in this city. So it's shorter time to travel means more people walking, more people are using bicycles. So that's what we try to aim for in Toyama, and we are grateful for the recognition. The Canadian delegation all decided to ride their bikes during the G7, and I think the security people were quite alarmed. And the fact that the mayors met together in the framework of G7 was itself is significant, as Mr. Fujino noted. It was the first attempt. So governmental ministerial meeting was held in conjunction with the mayoral meeting. At the end, our international friends talked about North-South relationships, that is, the relations or ties between developed and developing countries, how we can work together to leverage each other's strength, as well as South-South relations as well. And I think it was meaningful that we were able to share that view. And during the breakfast meeting with the ministers, it seems that the mayors were much more active in their discussions. It's not for nothing that they beat elections, other opponents during elections. In the future, there should be more opportunities like this, mayoral sessions in parallel with ministerial meetings, and that was voiced as well. And I think as a city of Toyama, we should build on that experience to move forward. Thank you. Thank you very much for that input. We now go to Mr. Kobayashi, Vice Minister of the Ministry of Environment, who will address the fruits, the results of the G7 Toyama Environment Ministers meeting and the role of Toyama in that context. Thank you very much for your invitation. I'm both excited and happy to be here. The city session was held in this order with this dynamic. Under this dynamic, meaning I was mostly the observer then. The fact that Japan had an opportunity to chair the G7 this year, in a way, was a good fate for Japan. It was good fortune as well. Of course, we had to do well, so there was that tension. Last year was an important year when the SDGs were defined. Global goals for sustainability was defined, and how in this first year, how to kick off efforts warranted much attention. The fact that the environment ministers met in Toyama was an important milestone. And the fact that Toyama was picked is partly due to the very enthusiastic efforts by the mayor as well. Toyama is endowed with nature and industry as well. The city session, the session on city was a public session. It was held under a very collegial atmosphere. Some people say that the ministerial meeting perhaps was more interesting. Rather, the city session was more interesting than the ministerial meeting. So we welcomed 5 mayors from abroad. Mr. Mori, the Toyama mayor, was the chair, but we also had mayors from Kitakyushu and Higashi Matsushima as well. There was a lot of passion felt from some mayors. Other mayors seemed calm and logical on the surface, but obviously with a lot of passion inside. So it was interesting. It was great having everyone together. The key message was that cities should drive environmental policies, and this was a common understanding, awareness amongst the delegates, and I believe the joint communique, the summary, reflects that. Just a little bit about Japan, particularly the mayor of Higashi Matsushima overcame the great earthquake and spoke about, therefore, resilience. And the Kitakyushu mayor spoke about international cooperation at great length. I was the co-chair. I had a privilege of acting as co-chair with Mayor Mori. And as mentioned by the 2 speakers, all of the mayors seemed very enthusiastic, very passionate, but at the same time, they also had, it wasn't just passion, they also had unique and innovative ideas. And taking specific, tangible actions as well. It left an indelible impression on me. This was a valuable and rare opportunity. Hopefully, it will continue next year as well. Next year, the G7 will be held in Italy. It's up to the Italian government. And this year, actually, the city of Florence, the mayor of Florence was here. He was very excited. He promised that he will push the government to enable the mayoral meeting held during the next G7 as well. Let's go to the next round.
And in this, the city-related parallel session, and would like to talk about the future undertakings and the future initiatives. And on the May 15th, following this session, what happened is something that I would like to reflect. And there were many things discussed. And first, I would like to ask Mr. Kobayashi, the Vice Minister, to share with us what happened, what was talked about. Thank you. And in the city session, and also in the Toyama Environment Ministerial Conference, is the topic I'm going to cover. And so the city to cooperate and collaborate together it seems to be forming some momentum. And the Ministry of the Environment, with that as a backdrop, there's the ASEAN 10-country meetings, and including China and also Pacific nations such as Australia participate in this meeting to create the sustainable cities. And this also has the endorsement of the ministerial level. And the Vietnam government is very enthusiastic to support this initiative, and many local governments also joined. And SDG is one of the main focuses in this discussion. And also, and as always, the Japan and the East Asia, and with some expansion of the area, there are a lot of discussions on the cooperation between the countries and the cities. And in each countries, there's a progression of the urbanization, increased urbanization, and leading to the issues of air pollution and also the waste management. And so many of the cities are now facing the need to start incinerating the municipal waste. And Japan also has the Japan Credit Mechanism JCM system, and this attracted a lot of attention. And in the framework of APEC, which is hosted by China, how to plan and put the policies related to cities is one of the main topics, and mostly in Asia. So have been working mainly in the Asia in this regard, and there are some more concrete ideas for green cities and the eco town, and even the mayors from China are beginning to mention such the environmentally friendly policies and initiatives. And in that the parallel session of the G7 meeting, it was picked up. And so in the national level, there seems to be a lot of movement involving the cities and municipalities. Now, I would like to ask Mayor Mori, in your experience of participating in such international conferences, please share with us your experience. And so the following the ministerial meeting on the 16th of May, I joined the meeting to consider the sustainable city, and it had a subtitle that the cities, the future picture of the city starting from Toyama, and the participants were the experts from different areas, and they contributed to the meeting by sharing some expert knowledge. And it was a good venue for Toyama to be presented to the rest of the world. And also on June 25th in Lisbon, Portugal, I was invited to the round table of the mayors, and a month prior to this meeting, there was the G7 ministerial conference, and so that was taken up as one of the topics in the round table, and this was a good opportunity again for me to present my city to our colleagues in the world. And so towards the end of each year, there's the FCCC, UNFCCC meetings conference, and in spring there was another meeting, sub-meeting held in Bonn, Germany, in spring, and the number of the government representatives took part in this meeting. And now about the future. Now we'd like to go to the last theme about the future undertakings, and I gather that Mayor Mori has a lot of new ideas about the future of the cities. Now, in the parallel session of the G7 Environment Ministerial Conference, the mayor of the Bristol made a proposal to each of the mayors, participating mayors, and so in Bristol, they put in place the program to let the school children to have the cooking and eating as part of their class. And unfortunately, in Toyama City, the fourth graders are joined this project to go to stay over at another family to learn about the culture and also the diet. And so I think it's very important to select the right location, and so there are many locations where the agriculture is abandoned, and so instead of trying to revitalize the agriculture in such a land, it may be important to replace the industry to such as forestry. And for example, Toyama children actually has this joins the program, and also they experience the tree planting, and so that's what Bristol does as well. And in Bristol, they let their children plant trees, and also. Now, the four cities were selected. Kitakyushu, Kobe, Yokohama, and Toyama were selected as representing cities in terms of eco-friendly initiatives. And there was an invitation from Mindanao and about the small hydraulic power generation project, and our counterparts in Mindanao invited the counterparts from Toyama, and our city. We have an agreement with the governor of the Kabanan prefecture, or the province of the Indonesia, and we provide with the technical support, and they also provide technical support in the Mindanao as well. And so we would like to continue with such initiatives to encourage the local companies to provide with the technical support to our counterparts in Asia and in other areas. I think Mayor Mori only had the very limited time to present, and Toyama expands from the Japan Sea all the way to the very high mountains, and also the caldera plain may collapse should there be any major earthquake. Therefore, Toyama is very keen to build the disaster prevention and disaster mitigation plans. And so tree planting will also contribute to mitigating the impact of natural disasters, and also it caters for the quality of life for the city people as well. And Toyama has this program to let the school children to go to the rural area to experience the lifestyle, and also to plant trees, and they will foster in that way their love of the home countries, and are very, very touched by the programs. And so I think that this type of activity should expand to other cities. Now, we'd like to invite Mr. Kobayashi to talk about the governmental support in municipal initiatives. Now, Mayor Mori has already acted upon the different agenda, and I'm very impressed about that. And so when I start talking, I may sound abstract as opposed to a more concrete presentation by Mayor Mori. And now the school children in Toyama plant trees, and I'm very excited about the growth of this forest. And the Toyama is very rich with the forestry, and also it has a very rich cultural asset, such as the art museum in the forest. And when it'll be very exciting to see this rich nature of Toyama to be even richer in the future. And now, Minister of the Environment, how we will work with the cities is something I would like to elaborate on. And so this there was a moment of some anxiety or some tension during the Environment Ministerial Conference, in fact. And there was some gap in understanding between the ministers, and we had the open session. So I was wondering how the discussion will proceed, and I was feeling a little nervous if I. But then there's some healthy level of nervousness is good for productive meetings, and the cities, what the cities are wishing to do should be reflected in the national policies as well. That was also mentioned. And there's a climate change issue and also SDGs. And we are now in the phase of determining the major direction of the national policies and the cities. And I'm pretty sure that people from there are many stakeholders in this meeting, and there's been a history of the environment policy of Japan, and the cities led the way in forming the environment policies in this country, and cities have a very important role to play going forward. And the role played by the Minister of the Environment is to pursue the INDCs, and it's not an easy goal and this requires the involvement of the entire citizenry of this country, and in that the role of the cities is quite significant, needless to say. And to address the climate change, in one way is to try to ambitiously build a low-carbon society by reducing the emissions. And also the impact of the climate change needs to be mitigated, and there's also an adaptation issue as well. And so these are very important keyword going forward. So we need to both think about the emission reduction as well as the adaptation, and this all certainly pertains to the actions made by the cities. And we need to have a low carbon vision with the 50 years and 100 years from now in our vision, and we would like to as ministry build the very vigorous and ambitious measures to allow this to happen. And from the global perspective, Japan is have been working quite actively in the international cooperation with our Asian colleagues. And Asia is urbanizing quite severely, and we have entered into a stage where we need to enhance our cooperation and the collaboration with our cities, with the cities across Asia. And with that, the Ministry of the Environment is beginning to formulate concrete ideas and directions. And these, in future, the one-off actions will not suffice, and we will need to lay out the series of actions and the series of projects with the robust policy in the backdrop, and by soliciting the participation of the cities. And to be honest, rather than the national government, the cities have the know-how and also the personal resources to drive the necessary initiatives for the future. And we would like to work with the cities so that there will be a major movement to work together between the cities future issues and the existing issues such as SDGs and the climate change. And thank you very much for very interesting comments. And it was a very short time, but we have once again recognized the importance of the roles played by the cities going forward. And because the time is limited, there wasn't much time allowed for Mayor Mori, but there's the cooperative program of the city of Toyama in Latin America for the segregation of the waste, municipal waste, and Mayor Mori is called Sensei, the teacher. Leading the way, this project for the waste segregation, and in that the cities have a lot of strength. And yesterday, at the beginning of the ISAP, we had the panel discussion in a similar manner. And Paris COP21, the Ambassador Chubiana, who was the special envoy to COP21, and in Marrakesh, in Morocco, in November and December, there'll be COP22, and the role of the city will be once again recognized to be very important. So this special envoy will incorporate such an agenda in COP22 as well. And so now that the Paris Agreement has been reached and adopted, and so towards the achievement of the goals for towards 2030, we would like to expect the cities to be even more vigorous in their undertaking. And the time is up, so I would like to once again thank Mayor Mori and the Vice Minister Kobayashi to have joined us out of their very busy schedule. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.